Following is a conversation with Frank Montano, a gifted art toy artist and digital sculptor who single-handedly takes his ideas from concept to collectible. Welcome to the Mo Method, where we talk to creatives who have turned their passions into professions. This conversation is a deep dive into the unique world of art toys. Frank's process is driven by a passion to bring one-of-a-kind characters to life. In this episode, Frank takes us through his journey from discovering blind box toys that sparked his imagination to becoming a master of crafting his own unique figures. You'll discover his full creative process, including his ZBrush and Blender sculpting techniques, as well as the critical steps of mold making and resin casting. Get ready to explore the business of art toys, how to build an audience while maintaining authenticity, and Frank's ambition to blend his style with iconic IPs such as Star Wars and Marvel. Without further ado, here's Frank Montano.
Hi, my name's Frank Montano, and I'm a 3D toy artist.
There's a lot I want to cover with him. I'm really curious because I do 3D toy design, but you kind of occupy more of the art toy space. So how'd you get into art toys? Let's start there. How'd you get into design and making art toys and your journey?
So I want to say it started in around 2012. I took a trip out here to Seattle to visit, and I stumbled across a toy store, and they sold these blind box toys where it has they're called Kid Robot Dunnies, and they're kind of still around, but they had artist series, and on the series they exactly, and on there I'm sure that's an artist named Sergio Mancini, I think it is.
Does it say on it?
But
I got this.
I think it says Sergio on the bottom. Yeah.
Nice.
That series is a good series. There's been like a couple series that they'll drop, and on these toys they have artwork from different artists of different disciplines, from graffiti artists to graphic designers, even toy makers that sculpt things with clay. And I just kind of geeked out on the culture behind it, and in the United States specifically, it was something that's been happening for just a short period of time. I think probably around 5 to 10 years before I came across it. And so I got these blind boxes and I started collecting them, and just knowing that there was someone behind the artwork gave me this idea of how cool would it be to actually have my own design on these toys. And so right at the gate, I started diving into these artists, the way that they go about creating them and painting them, and a whole world and community behind customizing these toys. And so there were forums that were dedicated to us, kind of like what Instagram is now, but not with the video, where we could share our work in progress, share what we're selling, and pretty much promote ourselves early on as part of the community. And that just became something I kept doing and posting and learning from, and small collaborations with other artists and other shops and just different people that were in that scene, which was really cool because I see a bunch of people that are still doing it, whether it be the Kid Robot stuff or their own original ideas. And I've learned so much along the way. And so 12 years ago, 13, I think we're coming up on. I always forget. It's been such a long time. Just been learning everything, learning about myself, learning about how to go about different processes and what works for me, what doesn't work. And it's been a long journey. Nice.
So I'm kind of curious because just to focus in on one of the things you said, and that is the culture around art toys. That's something that I haven't quite figured out myself yet. First of all, let's just start with here. How do you differentiate art toys versus collectibles?
So, I mean, I would say that collectibles are pretty much anything that you want to pick up and create a variety of that specific collection, right? Like even Pokemon cards would be considered collectibles.
Right. So let me rephrase. As in, when you think of collectibles, you think of let's say Funko Pops and the kind of more mainstream collectibles, versus art toys are more niche, more specialized, more premium also. So there definitely is crossover between the two, but they don't occupy the same space in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so I would guess I would differentiate the art toy aspect as an actual product that you're specifically designing to bring to life. So there's a lot that goes around that one toy, let's say. as the collectibles, you'll see like Dunnies were kind of collectibles and somewhat designer. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
uh, but it was all pretty much the same thing over and over, and that's kind of how Funko Pops are. That's I think that's the easiest way that I kind of look at it. But the art behind the artist creating these characters is, I think, what would determine them as really art toys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If
So
that
like,
makes sense to you.
yeah, yeah. So, but like, what I've personally noticed just in observing, kind of from the
Mhm.
outside, I guess, and somewhat inside, but again, just kind of like trying to look at it with like a bird's eye view. When you look at Funko Pops, again, that's just because I'm just using them because they are the obviously the biggest collectible brand out there.
Mhm.
Um, they have very broad appeal, right? Anybody who is into pop culture, good chance they have a Funko Pop, at least one,
Yeah.
Whereas once you get into like designer toys or art toys, however you want to, call them, it gets again much more niched and much more specialized, and it's almost as in the same person who's collecting Funko Pops isn't necessarily collecting Bear Bricks,
Mhm.
like it's two different demographics.
Mhm.
One person had this guy Sandra Super Prince is his handle. He said to me that he finds art toys is very much like street art culture. It's kind of like there's a lot of crossover with street art with the art toy kind of world. Which was interesting. I never had thought about that before that he said that. When he said that, like that really clicked. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, I really do see that. Um, but I'm just kind of curious to hear from you, like as somebody in the kind of the art toy space, like what are some of the thoughts? What do you think the culture is, and how would you kind of describe it?
So I think there's another tier that we can dive into. When I think of art toys, I do look at like Cause and Bear Bricks as a potential collectible and art toy. But the category that I really focus on are designer toys, I guess, as what I
Okay.
kind of reference them as, because I kind of see them as a little different. So when I look at those, I think of actual people, artists like myself, that are full on product, concept designing to
Yeah.
creating sculpting. That's more of a craft, and like I would say its own little niche. And the
Hmm.
designer toy, that's my experience. I always refer to them as that. And that's full on taking the whole project to, from the beginning to the end, all on yourself as an artist.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and that's my big focus, is not the vinyl toys that are produced over a factory, whether that be the collectible pop or bear brick.
Yeah.
That's kind of my wheelhouse and my world.
So you kind of look at it as every single piece that somebody purchases from you is coming straight from you, and not going through, not being mass produced in any way, even if it's just 500 pieces to make it kind of like an ultra rare, or not, that
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be ultra rare, but as in you're saying that you really look at it as each toy that you create is a piece of artwork in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, everything I've made has been 100% of myself put into these projects, from every piece
Hmm.
that was touched, sanding, cleaning, like everything has been crafted and cared for in a way that represents me, and whether
Yeah.
that be my style as an artist. That is where the design aspect really can change the way you perceive these. I have collectors that specifically will just purchase from me as a collector because they see that in my work.
Hmm.
And I think that really is what something that's been big to me, is how to like nurture that and
Yeah.
not need to expand all over in, thousands of units, because I want to focus on different characters, different projects, and have more variety as an artist to focus on, rather than just one specific toy that I want to produce many versions of.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So as in, like you were saying, like Dunnies, where it's all kind of the same basic, it's all the same base mesh, and then you're kind of making tweaks on top of it, as opposed to each one being its own unique, piece of artwork.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
And I think if you're an independent artist trying to create multiple toys, I think creating different characters can be a little costly up front if you're producing it with the factory. So if you are creating something like a dunny, and you want to do different colorways or
Yeah.
styles on that specific toy, that is financially a smart way to go. But for
Right.
me, it's like I love focusing and starting from fresh, from the design
Yeah.
concept to the finished piece.
Have you ever thought about the idea about kind of taking one of your pieces that's, let's say, very popular and mass producing it, even if it's not a huge scale, but 5,000 units, 10,000 units, something of that sort, or that's totally not even on your radar? You really,
Yeah.
because it sounds like you really enjoy having your hands on each and every piece.
I do, and that's actually one area where I'm trying to figure out what works best for me, because I do have people that want my work that can't really afford the original handmade piece.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking into ways currently of how I can maybe bump up that number a little bit. Everything I do is probably from one edition of one to, I think, at max 25. And right now I'm experimenting with a project that is an edition of 50, and that is a little production heavy, but I'm actually getting some help with the resin prototyping, which is, I think, will alleviate a lot of time on my end. And so there
Yeah.
are some ways that are smart for the artist as a business that I am looking into, because this stuff does take time. I'm working on a
Yeah.
project that I've been working on for about a year off and on. So it's
Nice.
yeah, it can be time
Nice.
consuming.
Yeah, for sure. So what's kind of your process? Like, can you kind of walk us through from initial
Yeah.
concept through to the final product that you're selling to the consumer?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had plenty of time to figure out kind of best practices for myself. I do share a lot of the content on YouTube, going over, the start of the project is straight into concept design. What character do I want to focus on, or like what am I feeling at the time? And that usually will start on a quick little sketch. And I'm notorious for creating these simple sketches and forms that are toy based, not really finished illustrations. And from there, I'll create a rough shape design of what I want, and I'll jump right into sculpting. So to sculpt, I'm using ZBrush, Nomad, Blender, and I want to say that is it. Yeah, I
Nice.
haven't delved into Maya, but yeah, those are my go-to.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'll sculpt on there and get all the pieces keyed out and ready for printing, and I'll take it over to what I use, Cheat2Box. It's a slicing software that'll get these models supported and straight into the printer, which are right behind me. I'm using a big old Elegoo printer and some other accessories from them. And at that part, it really is just dialing in the model orientation. And from there, I mean, I can start cleaning and getting ready to sand each piece. And I'll get a model really clean as I can. And then usually I'll go into mold making, which is silicone mold making, to get these parts produced into my own resin. And then after the resin molds are all done, all the resin's poured, that's when a little more cleaning happens, where you do spend time, sanding each piece and get them ready for paint. And that's when I'm actually having fun, is sitting down there getting ready to finish everything in front of me. It
Yeah.
takes a while though to get there, depending on the run. As you can see, why I wouldn't be focusing on a run of 100. I couldn't do
Yeah.
1,000. I'd lose my mind. I'd need a bigger place for one.
I'm
But
curious. So why do you take it from your resin print and then go and do the casting and molding? What's kind of the advantage of that?
okay. So I get this question often. When I started resin printing, I did focus on prints to paint to sell. And the issue I was having were that the resin that I was using was too brittle, and I was constantly getting things that were showing up broken. And
Mm.
so I had a number of projects where I had maybe like 25 of one character, and at least a dozen of them came back broken. And so usually when that happens, I'm asking whoever purchased it to kindly send it back to me, so I can actually whether repaint the entire project or parts that have been scuffed up and fix it for them, because I don't want my stuff really existing broken in their hands. It's hard. It would be hard to look at if I had it. And but there are some projects that I can't replicate anymore because I no longer have the molds. So I kind of refrain from just printing. I do certain jobs that require printing only rather than mold making every time, and it really just depends, like, on the design. If they're big, how to make sure that they're cared for. But in terms of mass numbers, yeah, I've had too many things break.
Mm. So you find the poured resin is more resilient and stronger than what you're getting off of a printer.
Yeah, by far, very very
Mm.
strong. Yeah.
Mm. Interesting. Is that because of the type of resin it is, or is that because of kind of like the amount of material that's going into it. Like a printer is obviously kind of a hollow shell, whereas once you're
Yeah.
casting and molding, you have a little bit of more, thickness to it.
Yeah, well, the printer, as if some of you guys are aware, the 3D printer lays down layers of resin to build up form. And within those layers, there's weak points that could just crack and
Right,
snap over time. And so the curing process isn't really something I can rely on as to the resin pouring. It'll be a solid form of liquid that, I mean, try with your hand to snap it. It would take some
right,
force, you
right,
know?
right. That's a
So
good point. I didn't even
definitely,
think about that, but yeah, that makes sense. It
yeah.
totally makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean, that also adds to like why some of the things I do are a little more on the higher end because of the more products that I'm purchasing, the equipment I need to use, and the time it's taking. It all is
Right.
something to incorporate into that final end piece.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So I'm curious to kind of dive into a little bit of like the business side of it. Um, let's kind of start with how did you build your audience to, because obviously that's kind of the first step to selling. If you want to sell your own art, you need to have an audience to sell it to. So how did
Yeah.
you kind of go about and build your audience to to fans?
Yeah, I think I'm very fortunate to have an earlier start to most people, and understanding how to market myself for one, and not be afraid to put myself out there, market myself. That's a big one. So if anyone's looking to get into the toy space, don't be afraid to try things. And I know one issue I faced before is just coming off as too salesy, trying to push a product in front of people, in a world where we see that everywhere. Try to find what works for you. And I think I've been able to do that because I was constantly learning how to do the custom toy thing on forums. And I was always just excited to do the next project and focus on what I'm working on, be really excited, and hopefully someone receives it well and continue that process of just keep creating. It was never like, oh, I'm going to sell up this so I have this money and I can go do this with it. It was
Right.
just from the very beginning, I tell people this often, is my very first piece. It was a vinyl toy that was a blank. I sold it, I want to say, for maybe $12 to $15 on eBay. That was like, I don't even know if I made a single dollar off that project. I definitely gave my time away for free, but I looked at it as an opportunity to buy another one and just keep going. So that from the beginning was always the reason to create stuff, is to be able to create more.
Right.
So with having those forums, I was able to, pilot myself in this toy artist custom industry and kind of be tailored and pioneered in that space, which gave me some credentials, and then I got better at what I was doing, and people were noticing my work, and I was constantly putting my stuff out there. Just, I think it was always to share. One obstacle starting early on was that not a lot of artists were sharing what they were doing.
Hmm.
They were not sharing, the tips, the tricks, the behind the scenes. Uh, and early on, I've noticed that there was this kind of like secrecy for the work.
Yeah.
And I think as an artist, there are artists like, let's say, Cause. Do a lot of people know how he goes about his process? And who helps him and how he starts that? No, but that's the stuff that I geek out on. Like, I'll tell you, he goes on
Right. Right.
Illustrator, he figures out a pattern, and he has these colors that they paint. That's stuff I love, right? The
Yeah.
behind the scenes. So that
Yeah.
gave me an up, I think, being able to share my stuff without being worried that someone's gonna steal this idea, someone's gonna be just like me or even better. Like, and so that's always kind of where I've been. Is the craft behind it was more important than selling the piece,
Hmm.
and being able to show that actually gave collectors an idea of how much work it takes to put into this stuff.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're seeing more value for it, and then they're showing up. I
Yeah.
think the biggest hurdle I have is that how much time does it really take? And if I'm taking too much time on a project, that's where I need to start focusing on, just getting a little more efficient. And that doesn't just mean time on doing work. It's my personal time too, how to
Yeah.
navigate that part of it. So, but yeah, starting on, if you want to share your work, I think it's the route to go, but do it from a place of sharing the inspiration that you have for it. Like when someone sees my work and they're excited to paint because they saw a video of me doing something, well, I'm hoping that they figure out how they can do that and share it with the next person.
Yeah.
This ripple effect. And
And I'll tell you, like, from my own experience, I found you on YouTube because, like I said, my background, I studied concept design. That's how I kind of got into the entertainment industry in the first place. And then after doing, I started in illustration, moved to 3D. Once I started doing 3D, I kind of fell in love with 3D pretty instantly. And then I was trying to figure out like where I kind of wanted to go professionally. And so there's kind of like the video game and VFX route, and that stuff didn't really do it for me. I've always gravitated towards tactile things more so than just completely virtual things. So for me, like I love theme park design. That's like my favorite. That's like the top of the pyramid for me. And so I felt like toy design was kind of like the next best thing of still having that tactile, something I could really get my hands on and really have a physical thing in front of me. And so then that's how I started kind of getting into toy design. But again, I was approaching it more from a like professional standpoint of, okay, I want to get a job working for Hasbro, Mattel, or Funko, as a toy designer. And then more recently, I got really fascinated with the whole art toy, movement or designer toy movement. And so I started looking around on YouTube, just kind of how does one go about making an art toy. And that's how I came across your page. And you really had, first of all, I have to say that the quality of content that you put out is excellent. As in just your filming and editing, like it's beautifully shot, which is obviously very helpful to make it, to sell it. And then on top of that, it's very informative and very valuable. Like a person, especially, and I'm coming with a background. Somebody even without a background who can come and watch your stuff and really get an understanding of like, oh, this is kind of how I could go and do it myself. And that's really cool. I think that's really, it's really powerful and valuable to have people like yourself who are kind of showing people the ropes of how to do it. And I think that's really, to your point, like that's really how you develop that audience, is by being vulnerable and showing the world like this is how it's done. And a lot of people don't want to do it because they think, oh, people are going to steal my ideas and blah, 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 blah. And I think that's a very immature way of looking at it. You really kind of want to, the more you share, will people steal your ideas? I'm sure there will be instances of that. But that's going to happen kind of regardless, whether to do it before you put it out or after you put it out, right? On the other hand, the people who actually want to be making things are not going to want to steal your ideas. They're going to want to make their own things. That's half the joy of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of it's very well said how you put it. I'm curious to ask you, just to kind of pull on this theme a little bit more. One thing that artists in general across the board, I think, struggle with is the whole idea of pricing and setting rates and all that jazz. The business side of it. How did you kind of figure that out, and how do you navigate that side of the business?
Yeah, I think even in a time like now, it's still a point of contention for myself, and I think being realistic and it being a vulnerable thing is something that I just kind of dealt with for a while. But the way I approach it now is to actually look at my projects, since I do them so often. How much time does it take to print one character and get it painted for prototyping? How much time does it take for molding if I'm molding? Understanding the hours that I'm actually putting in. Some days will be 15-hour work days. Some days I'm coming in just for 4 hours because I need a break half the day. But actually looking at that time, and then the costs. There's a lot of costs that go into, and that's not just products or using electricity or the printers, but like fees that I'm paying for when people purchase my stuff. A portion will go to these, Stripe and PayPal, not what you have it. So you're also losing a chunk of money to them, and shipping costs. So understanding what are you actually taking away, like money wise, to then either spend it on something you need to spend it on or the next project. Just getting really clear with those numbers. It shouldn't be scary. It's just understanding, okay, hey, I'm only making $5 an hour. Don't know if that's worth my time. I'm making $50 an hour. This is a good project. Uh, I think I have a baseline at this point. Like, I like to try to say I pay myself about $30 to $50 an hour, and I'm comfortable with that. Like,
Hmm.
if I can do that, great. But also, some of those costs will go into the project, right?
Right.
So, just understanding those basic math numbers of, I guess, accounting or project management
Yeah.
are a good skill set to actually understand.
Yeah.
From there, I'll typically gives me a ballpark range. Okay, it needs to be this price, and I need to sell this many, or why am I doing it? You know. But if you're working at a full time job and you have extra time, and you can dedicate it to this passion, that's just that's fun money. Use it to build your business, to start new things. That's what I did. For so long it was a side thing. I would work construction, or even early on, I was delivering pizzas. And when I got off of work or I had time between it, I'd be painting toys and making things. And I think a lot of us see somebody doing something and we want that. We want to be there at that level. But understanding what it takes for us to get to that type of level. And it's not just how great you are at making things, it's how much time do you actually dedicate to, whether it be art, work, family, and other things. And there's a lot of sacrifices you're going to have to make as a person to build something bigger than just yourself where you're at now.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious, like how for you did you kind of push through those challenges and get over those? Because obviously it's not for everybody, right? There's the cliches of grit and all those kind of things that everybody's heard before. But how do you approach those challenges and those overcoming those difficulties in building what you're trying to do, what you've done?
Yeah, I think it's a great question for me to think about because, I look back early on and there was this lingering thought of how could I kind of one up myself? How am I going
Mm,
to come and do something just as good as the last project? And it wasn't something that I was afraid of, but even now thinking like looking at the stuff I'm making now, I'm like, whoa, you're making like I have to wake myself up. You're making pretty cool stuff. And there isn't that worry of, oh, am I going to be able to make something again? Will it be better? How will it be perceived? But when I do have hurdles, I think it's really the biggest one for me as a person, and my childhood own stuff that I had to go through is the idea of being enough.
mm-hmm.
And when I look at my work, I think when I'm not when I'm taking too much time working on a project, I'm worried that it's becoming less of an importance. And what I mean by that is to the collector or the person waiting for my stuff. And that has always been a challenge, is showing up for them. And even with
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, showing up and being a little more consistent. And I'm struggling in that area, but knowing that whatever time it's going to take for me to get this done, to get over whatever I'm going through, is just the time that it's going to need to happen.
Yeah.
And being patient with myself, and I, I'm learning not to beat myself up for my own faults, whether it's saying yes, I'll agree to this show and not being able to deliver because my own time. Those are things that are really hard, as I'm going to say, any artist trying to make something happen for themselves and saying yes to everything, and then being forced to put in the spot where you can't deliver, and so your word is not valuable.
Right.
Um, that's, I think, going to be for me the biggest struggle. It's not necessarily the artwork or the idea or the process. That stuff I mean, I'm comfortable in that spot now, so that's not the struggle. But if you are struggling in those areas, there's so many ways to do different things, and along, different paints and
Yeah.
processes that you can try. So that's all. That should be fun. That should always be fun. I would not stress that. And if you are, as someone that had zero patience coming into this at the very beginning, um, don't let it stop you. Just keep coming back to it. Put it down, come back to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of in a gist what I've gone through as a person.
Yeah. No, it's powerful because it is challenging, and it comes with its challenges to to be creative. I mean, if you're doing something where you kind of are just a cog in a wheel, it's like, okay, come to work, do your thing, leave, and repeat.
Mhm.
Okay, so you can kind of just life, you can kind of mindlessly go through it, but if your whole business is creativity, and then you kind of come to a point where you're like, I'm not feeling creative today, but then you kind of have a deadline. So
Yeah.
it's a kind of a fine line you're walking of like, trying to balance those two things.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm curious to just circle back to something you just touched on. You were talking about kind of comparing yourself to, the day before, and always trying to like one up yourself. A big issue that I think people have across the board, artists across the board have, is the whole comparison culture where you go onto Instagram, you go into ArtStation, you go onto YouTube, and you see these other artists who are doing all this amazing work, and you think to yourself, oh my god, like I could never do that. Why am I even bothering? Why do I even try? What's kind of been your relationship with that comparison culture? And obviously it's great your outlook of comparing yourself to the day before is the healthy way of doing it. So, but have you ever had the other side where you compare yourself in the unhealthy way of looking at other people's work and be like, oh man, like I could never do that?
Well, I think, I mean, I might just go on a tangent right now, but maybe
Go
bear
for it.
with me. Uh, the way I look at putting my work forward is is simply this. Whatever I'm working on, I'm hoping that I'm doing my very best. I'm also trying to enjoy the process and appreciate just the ability to show up in this present time, being able to paint whatever I'm making, and just like having that be my experience. Like that very simple idea of I'm here painting. This is what I get to do is so meaningful. And so if I look at somebody doing something and then I look at what I'm doing, I shouldn't let my mind go on and think of what that means for me.
Mm.
I mean I get it because I have watched videos of people making things and different trends within the toy art community and things I've done and things people are now doing and just comparing myself in those little areas. Like people are making videos for art toys now, I'm sure of it, but I'm not the first to do it, So therefore, if I think and let my ego build up to where like, oh, I started this trend or this is how I do it, now people like, I'm then taking away from my purpose of sharing my work so others can get inspired to actually do it themselves. If someone's going to do something and they're taking their time to do the same thing I'm doing, I all I have is respect and appreciation for them to be able to do that. I want them to be able to do it. And so knowing how to balance that scale of your mind and how you perceive good and bad is a muscle you need to flex, and you need to worry about it because it'll come and bite you in the back if you let it. If you let your guard down and start to kind of self-sabotage your own journey. But on that note, or that the topic of looking at other people, I don't think artists hundreds of years ago had that. Sure, they may go on in a gathering, a community gathering, and see other people painting, not saying, "Oh, they stole that from me," because they didn't experience those lives
Yeah.
together.
There
And
was not the
so when
internet.
I look at it, yeah, and so I don't think we're meant to see everything we're seeing on social media, because what we're doing is we're taking that in, and whether it be politics, art, just fashion, anything going on in the world, and we're letting it dictate how we live and feel and think, and it's also more that's distracting from being able to be an artist. Even like me, I have to realize, like even my most recent videos of on Instagram have been just do what I do. I don't care what the metric says. I don't care how many likes, comments. I don't. Whoever it reaches, it reaches. But if I'm doing it because this is what I do and that's what I wanted to do, that should be good enough. And so chasing and comparing yourself is one way to kind of get yourself into this constant cycle of only doing that.
Mm.
And I think it does take away from the actual creativity. And so it's really hard because one person wants to be influenced and inspired. Like if I go on, I want to be inspired if I'm looking for it, and other people, more than inspiration is going to come nowadays. I'm going to be stuck on a meme or reel that is just making me laugh, and then I get distracted. Uh, and so knowing what tools do you have at your exposure, like right in front of you, and how you can actually look at them best.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if that's too much of a tangent, but
No, it's
that's
perfect.
kind of yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm curious. Just to, you're talking about like trends. How do you kind of like? How do you strike a balance between your following your own artistic vision, but then also keeping up with the trends?
Yeah, so I try not to follow trends too much. I mean, I don't know if people look at my work and say I do something that's trendy or not. So that might be hard to really give you the exact example or answer. But the things I have done that were trends, whether it be trendy music that is viral, or trendy toy process putting things together, or like MS or is it ASMR type stuff. I've done those things, and I've got little reels with millions of views and stuff. But I've noticed what they actually bring to me.
Mm.
What I got out of that were a more broad like audience reach, and with that broad audience reach doesn't really bring me, I would say, an advantage. It brings more eyes to my work, but they could be just people scrolling just to scroll.
Right.
And as a business, yeah, you want exposure, but being aware that you're not going to always create viral content for them to just view. And so that's where I think you also really have to just like understand that you want them also to see what you're making now and the true version of you, whatever that is as an artist, and that process, and still value it, not just enjoy the pleasant part of me painting a toy, and being able to show them more than just that, because the viral content I've shared were trendy music going to certain parts of painting or whatever, and they were simply just for views, and some of it brought negative attention. People
Yeah.
that are like, oh, he's just painting a Funko Pop, and
Yeah.
that kind of sat with me weird. And so knowing that I don't need to create trends, I create what I create, even
Yeah.
in video form. And so having
Yeah.
that eye for what I do is more for me. Yeah.
Mm. So how do you kind of like look at social media? What's your kind of? It sounds like you have like a kind of complicated relationship with social media,
Yeah.
a
Love hate, right?
situationship.
Um, no, I just think social media, specifically Instagram, is my go-to. It's how I built
Yeah.
myself. Um, they're more now of TikTok, right? And for TikTok, it was just a pool of so much of anything. And now I think it's making it harder for this community to actually be a community. And because you're not just seeing just toy stuff, you're seeing everything else that you may
Yeah.
like, that it wants to feed you. And so I'm looking at it as like, it's not gonna get me what I wanted, and in the early end. And what that was is like actual attention to see this craft. I can't force that. And so knowing that I can't force it now, just maybe share cool projects. Like that's my ability now. If I want to go on and script things, if I want to try to be more viral in a sense, there are those options, and I have to really weigh when they're right and not just use them all the time.
Yeah.
Because I know I have work to do that's actually paying me, not content creating.
Yeah.
Uh, and so knowing that, like, oh, I'm just gonna show up as how I would, regardless of how many people see it. And I think if you can just be in that mindset and maybe get better and learn what works for you when it comes to shooting video stuff, that's when you have something again that's so special to yourself that you can learn to grow from. And I think always having the ability to sit there and make something is what is your advantage, rather than getting eyeballs to see it, rather than saying, I did this and I'm going to do this. It's more of just appreciate your alone time, appreciate that time of creating.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, I think, one thing we tend to forget is the moment we're in
Yeah.
making artwork.
Enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, I'm kind of curious. Like they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So I'll kind of put them both out there, and you can kind of pick which way you want to approach this. Um, what's what's your kind of relationship with um building your network in the space, and also on top of a network, because network is like a very like professional and like business sounding, and then the other side of the coin is like community. That's the more, a nicer way of putting it, and they're not exactly the same, right? One is more, again, one's more business focused and how can I advance my career, and one is more, audience focused, and how do I kind of communicate with the other people who have similar interests and who are interested in my work.
Mm-hmm.
How have you kind of like handled that and manage that, and do you spend a lot of time on kind of trying to build community and network?
Um, I'm gonna be honest, that part has been a challenge, and only because of so much time that actually takes,
Yeah.
and I have, forgive you guys if any of you are waiting for responses, but I have a list of, I'm sure, people asking questions, asking for help, asking for things. And I don't have time to sit there and answer and have conversations with so many people. That stuff can eat up a whole day,
Yeah.
and I try to, when I get a chance, I'll try to go through some of this stuff and use it to hopefully put into some of my videos,
Mm.
and hopefully they still get value from me. I'm hoping they don't think I'm just ignoring them, because nobody wants to be ignored, and so that has been a struggle when it comes to community and being there for them. My standpoint is just share the work. Someone's going to find it. And I get, people ask me questions that are very general questions about what I'm doing, and I've answered them in many YouTube videos. And I'm hoping, without sounding rude, that they can actually go on and watch them, spend some time, really dive into it, study, not just watch my content, but if you want the answer, it's right there.
Yeah.
It just takes a little bit of time. And so knowing that they also have to do the work, because when I started, I had so many questions and I didn't have YouTube videos. I didn't have the stuff I was making, you know? And so the answers are right there is usually what I think of when it comes to community. Now, when it comes to business for growing and collaborating and other artists, I'm very like, I'm chill about it. So I have artist friends all over the world that are sculptors and amazing people. I like to use it as my messenger. So I'll have conversations with them here and there. And so when a brand comes into my, to my DMs, it's the same approach. I am who I am. So if they want to build something, if they want me to sponsor me or what it may be, I'm very chill about it. And if they don't receive that well, like I'm not on time, I don't answer right away. Unfortunately, I'm not working for them, so
Right.
I'm not going to be in that spot. And so the professionalism in workplaces, that culture, is great for certain circumstances. But as a person, I just like the ability to be flexible. And if I don't show up, I hope you don't hate me for it. Like it's just, I'm only one man, and I hope
Right.
that comes clear across what I'm doing. So if you're trying to build with businesses, I'm sure you're going to have to take yourself outside of comfort zone if you really see it as an opportunity. And there are people that I'm sure are going to contact me that I'm like, oh, I need to be more adamant about making sure I get back to them and they get them all the information they need. Things that are
Yeah.
important to me, what aligns with where I'm heading. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very chill, and then I'm not able to answer everyone. And if I want to build a community, I'm usually looking at Patreon. It's very hit and miss. I have so many opportunities, but just not all the time to dedicate to.
The
Yeah,
building the
and so
community.
yeah, I'd say, like, for someone that puts an importance on building a community, I think that's gonna have to you're gonna have to be vulnerable to just be yourself and not force it.
Yeah.
And so when you do get to, you're going to have people show up. And there are people that are just people that fell in love with my art YouTube videos that have been talking to me for a number of years. And I've answered their question and we just had small conversations and we'll check in. And so there are friends I've made through just creating YouTube videos. And
Yeah.
those are also conversations I can have with them just as a human being, saying hi every now and then, So not everyone, unfortunately, just because of the amount of people on the
Yeah.
DMs.
Yeah. I'm curious, just to kind of circling back something from earlier on in the conversation. Um, you talked about kind of early on in your career how you were like undercharging. You know, charging the first toy was $15-$20. Um, how do you make the leap to higher end clients? Right, because when you're
Yeah.
selling, again, if I go to buy a Funko Pop, I'm spending $15. If I'm buying an art toy, I'm spending 150, 200, 250, and upwards from there.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of make that leap from going from the kind of, I don't know, not cheap, but like whatever, to make to enter that high end market?
Okay. Well, you know, when I did the custom toy dunny stuff, I had a variety of people collecting that. So I had a larger client base, let's say. And, excuse me, I had the larger client base, and that allowed me to consistently put stuff out. And so people showed up for the dunnies, the custom toys. And so that was comfortable. Being able to know that I can put something out. I think it was like $85 for like a small little toy early on. And just keep that going because I had a full time job, but I wanted to do
Yeah.
this full time. Um, it's the moment I started diving into sculpting myself
Mm-hmm.
and my own work and learning how to print and understanding like to get to this spot, it's going to take money for equipment and the videos, like I'm having an overall cost. And so I slowly bumped up the price. But one of the biggest challenges at one point in my career was doubling the cost that it's going
Mm-hmm.
to actually take to finish a project.
Yeah.
And when I did that, you know, I had like 20 people that are specifically collectors of mine that I reached out to. Hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm actually looking for. Is anyone interested in supporting me on this project? And just being very transparent, not, hey, I need your money. It was more of like where I'm heading as a person. And if they trust me as an artist and they want to see and support me, this is what it's going to take. So I was able to early on tailor to a certain few people that wanted to have my work, that I knew were going to show up for me when I wanted to do something because I wanted to create. And that was the purpose. And I approached it as if they were my friends because honestly, they were showing up for me, you know, and so why not? And have these conversations and open myself up to who I am and get to know who they are. And I built a relationship with those specific people that have allowed me to just keep creating. And for
Mm.
me, I see it as I'm lucky to actually have those relationships and be able to continue to make you know, and the content creating, that's just the icing on top of everything, is to be able to express myself and share it in a different view. um,
Yeah.
so I would say like if for early on, if you're trying to understand the pricing and trying to get your stuff going, understand one, the amount of time it's going to take, you know, and that'll narrow down the actual cost of what the price should take. And if you need to bump it down, be realistic, that's fine. But then when it comes to marketing it, you know, show that this is what you made, this is what it took, share that stuff. And then three, just be open for the possibilities to someone actually finding your work and supporting you. You'll be surprised. It may not sell out right away, but don't let that stop you. And it may take some time. This is why I say, you know, do it on the side for now. But you can gradually build. You can kind of get an audience going. It's a slow process if you're just
Right.
starting out. And so, but foster those relationships, say thank you, you know, respect their time, be realistic about how long it's going to take. Even if you told them it's going to take 3 months, now it's on 5 months, like just be transparent, you know, and they'll understand you. And if you're doing great work and they're continuing to support you, like what more could you ask for? You know,
Right.
like just keep that going and don't worry about how people are doing it and what they're doing next and what ideas are happening. Just focus on how you do something, express it. And I think that's going to work out. You know, it
Yeah.
has for me. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I'm kind of curious to hear how has your style of, like changed over the years?
Yeah.
Because obviously you talked about kind of starting with this custom dunnies, and now you're making really cool, unique, original pieces.
So my artwork was very, I guess, unpolished. It was edgy. Even like I did a bunch of sketches and I done panel paintings of characters that I have. You could see some of that stuff on YouTube on my early videos of my characters, but I think it was more raw and like just trying to get a feeling and expression out. And
Mm.
now I feel like mentally I'm in a more higher, like I'm happy, like happier, and I'm not there's no struggle of, oh, I'm trying to make it. It's more like get the work done. But
Yeah.
I think that allows me to express myself in a fun way. So now like stuff is, I would say my work is masculine but cute in a
Hmm.
way, you
Hmm.
know? And so that's kind of who I am as a person, and that's what I'm able to like express, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would say now it's more rounded. It's just everything is just, I guess, cleaner and nicer. You know, I'm
Yeah.
learning things, I'm enjoying it. And so I think you could, if you look back at my work, you could see that now as to like just figuring things out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious. I hope you don't mind me asking, but like, what's a personal experience that you feel like most profoundly affected your artistic style?
Hmm. An experience. Sorry, I'm going to pause. I just want to put some
Yeah.
thought into
Take your
it.
time.
Man, I think, okay, so for me, I've told this story before on a podcast about who I am. I grew up watching cartoons, and I grew up watching the animations of certain styles of characters that I really liked. A lot will find SpongeBob is cool, Dexter, different shape languages that, you know, animators were using early on in the 90s, and falling in love with certain styles of these characters. And for me, I would try to draw them perfectly. Like the form makes it, like I wanted the paper to come to life when what was on the TV as a kid. And I was understanding how to bring it together really nicely. And that wasn't by pausing the show. That was by watching and watching and watching and like waiting for that right angle of that character. And so I've learned how to like view and draw. And so I think that early on gave me this like skill set to feel something and produce it, feel something and produce it. And I think that is really the core of where I am today is
Mm.
when I look at my work and I'm holding it, like I know we've talked about this guy, a little blank toy of feeling it, holding it, that form, the shapes, you know? And if I feel good about that, that is something that I look on as a kid doing the same exact thing. I
Yeah.
think for me that's the biggest eye opener of wow, you started early, you know, and that shaped for what I'm doing now to be able to go back to that part of myself as a kid, not a teenager struggling trying to figure out what to do in life, but as a kid knowing that this is something I loved early on is animating
Yeah.
character, you know, design, and so that is who I kind of am.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's beautiful when like you get to live your childhood dreams. You know, that's like the what more could you ask for, really?
Yeah, and so I mean, I never knew I
Yeah.
would actually be here if I didn't pick up a toy and start painting. And when I
Yeah.
started, you know, when I started doing the custom toys, I never liked painting. It's one of the things I've never done, and that was still part of the process I've had to learn too.
Yeah, definitely. Just out of curiosity, what were your like favorite cartoons as a kid?
Oh, hands down, Dexter's Lab was the best for me. I mean, then you have Powerpuff Girls is right there in that same
Yeah,
form.
yeah.
I mean, that just depends on you know what network you're watching. Hey Arnold
Yeah.
was huge. It was different, but I love the character design. I mean, there's I don't know if you remember Recess from
Yeah, sure.
CB NBC or something. They
Yeah,
also have
yeah.
like then you have like what is it? I was getting into a few of them with because I have kids, so I'll like share some of that, you
Yeah.
know, the old cartoons. But I mean,
Yeah.
Cow and Chicken's fun, Cowardly, Courage the Cowardly Dog, he's weird, Cat Dog, like, yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
name it. If it was out early on, I was probably just consuming food and watching like a little
Yeah,
nerd.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So
Um,
I'm curious nowadays, like what are kind of the what are some of the things in the art toy world that you really enjoy? Like who are some of the artists that you really gravitate towards now?
Yeah, I think to be very honest, it is in the toy space or the designer toy space. Friends of mine, what are they making? What are they sculpting? What are they up to? I value the person behind the artwork
Mm,
like I know far before I can really appreciate the art.
yeah.
Because then I'm able to like then invest myself. I have quite a few artists in Spain that I always like and share, and I have some of their work. I have I don't know if you know Arctic Fox. She's a real good friend of mine. She does resin casting. She's great at
Cool.
it. Marina, who is an artist in Spain, she hand sculpts characters with clay, and
Wow.
she's been building. She's like right behind me. She's doing so great. I mean, then there's other just sculptors who are part of the
Yeah.
community that, but
Yeah.
I would say it's first and foremost, it's friends that communicate with me. Those are the people I'm looking to see what they're making. And then when I have the chance to pick it up, I'm going to show up.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
yeah, it's
I'm
very like networky.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, just because again, I'm really just like as an outsider trying to understand the art toy world, like,
Hmm.
who are like the big players in your opinion? As in, not focusing on your friends and your network, but from a sort of objective standpoint, who do you think are kind of the biggest players in the art toy space right now?
Right now, I think that's a hard one because one, the space feels broad,
Yeah,
like to where everybody's making and printing things, right?
yeah,
So I would say art toy space, it's hard to identify. I mean, like, who would you say? I mean, like from your perspective, real quick, to give me an idea.
yeah. So I'd say the biggest names that come. See, here's the thing. Going back to the very beginning of our conversation is like where you kind of draw the line between collectibles, art toys, and designer toys. Let's put it that way, right? So like when I think of the biggest art toy names out there, it's Bear Bricks, it's Dunnies, it's what's his name? Klaus, is that his name? Yeah,
Cause
Cause. I knew I was saying it
no,
wrong.
so
um,
yeah,
those are like those are the ones that are first come to mind because again, as somebody who's not doesn't have intimate knowledge of the inner workings of the art toy space,
mhm.
that those are the ones you see, right? Like I said,
Yeah, yeah,
when you see people collecting, and again, I don't think of those toys as collectibles in the same way that I think of Funko Pops, right?
yeah.
They kind of
Okay,
occupy a different space. Once you get into the designer toys and like the nitty gritty, it gets a lot more tricky to really call out the big names because it's if they're not being mass produced, it's much more difficult to find them, right?
yeah, it's true.
So, like for example, I just I forgot the name now. Somebody just showed me this art toy the other day. They were super cool. Oh, I totally forgot the name now. I'll
It's
like
fine.
find it and put it on the screen or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
he does like really cool. Like he had a really cool like Ninja Turtle series where they
Okay,
were like kind of like in like streetwear and like kind of with really cool tattoos. Like just really cool stuff.
okay,
Um, and they're like $350 a piece. Like they're but really cool stuff. But like before I was told about it, I never had even heard about this guy before.
yeah.
And then like there's people like I just recently found on Instagram this guy Vandal, right? Like in his whole thing. And like so you have these people who unless you're in the, I don't even know if you're in the space. Like unless you are really seeking them out, you're not going to find them in the same way that you'll see a bear brick or
Hmm.
multiple bear bricks on sale at a collectible store. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's a different world. And
Yeah.
so that's again going back to the very beginning of this conversation, like trying to understand that world is just been kind of like I don't know,
It
I've been
it it's like buying a pair of Jordans and then buying a pair of custom Nikes from someone that's hand tailoring everything.
yeah, yeah.
To really understand the person right in front of both that doesn't really know the difference. I mean, for the
Yeah.
big names that the big names that or the bigger names, Bear Bricks, Cause, Kid Robot, they just have had an opportunity and branding and money spent at exposure. So I
Right.
think it's very tricky nowadays to just buy that exposure. But if you're doing something and it pops off and goes viral as an artist, there may be someone that says, "Oh, this person's big. This person's creating life-size characters of anime characters, and their views are getting millions of views and likes and stuff." would they be considered the biggest person?
Right.
Maybe. I think one of the things I've looked at is really who's making something and
Hmm.
what are they doing with that line of work? How are they expressing themselves? And not every artist is creating content that are amazing people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they don't get that recognition.
Yeah.
I think it does really for like the true toy collector artist like person. It takes that time to really understand and learn. And I think that's part of the fun as a collector. And I don't
Yeah.
know if you have any experience with that, but yeah, I'd say it would be really hard because even I think what I'm creating is pretty kick ass,
Yeah. For
And
sure. I love your
but does
stuff,
that
and you're
did that make it?
yeah. I was gonna say you're Mandalorian, and now you're doing that stuff, the Foundlings. Like I love Star Wars.
It's
So for me,
fun.
like, and your style is just
I
really
know.
great, also.
Thank you. And that's something that I've had to like also appreciate is like the Star Wars stuff I love doing because early on as a kid that was part of me too. And I'm not the biggest Star Wars geek, but you know what? Creating these toys has allowed me to dive into the lore and learn about different, series and movies and comics for fun, for the fun of it. And kind of like I'm at this point where I kind of just want to make Star Wars stuff now. Like I know it looks like that's all I do, but it's coming to realize I can just love this and maybe
Yeah.
this works for a long time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
knowing there's a community behind that itself, I think
Right.
I'm in a weird spot. But yeah, if I was creating my own characters, I think that people would still show up for it. There's no, fear for creating my own stuff. But now it's like I get to do the twist and do a little bit of both and still have fun. And just knowing that, like, you got to have fun first
Yeah.
and then let it all come together. Because
Yeah.
without that, you're trying to reach numbers, and I think big corporate companies like Bear Bricks and stuff, it's all numbers and exposure, and it's building a big empire you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
and if that's not your goal, there's nothing wrong with that. And so I
Right.
think that's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean
I'm
there's
curious. No, I'm curious to ask just 'cause about what you're saying. Like, so how do you look at those artists? Because there are a few of them who kind of keep an anonymous persona
yeah.
in their artwork. How do you like? What's your thoughts on that?
uh so yeah, I think we all have the ability to share who we are as a person, which is cool. It makes it so much like it makes it fascinating because I'm able to jump on a live stream or a YouTube video and just be me, and being able to do that. Um, yeah, that's just part of the fun. For people doing that in different ways, if they're not sharing and they're learning how to share themselves, um, that's just an opportunity to like a person even more, or want to see their work, or want to hear, what is Frank going
Yeah.
to teach us next.
Yeah.
And if they're having fun with it, if they're doing memes, or if they're just engaging with people, that's just the fun of expressing yourself. I don't think there's just you need to only do toys to be an artist.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but again, just going back to the question. So again, for
Okay.
those people who choose to specifically put up that wall and not let you know who the person is at all and keep that anonymity.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? 'Cause it sounds like you very much appreciate the actual getting to know the person behind the artwork. Like, that's a very important thing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
you, what you're saying.
So, and if you're not, and you just want to just share the project, if that's what we're going towards, um, I think then you're gonna have to be very creative about how you market. Let's say market or
Mm.
show that to the viewer, because I think it's really hard to take a picture of an art piece or a toy and really stand out.
Mm.
It's if you're sharing a photo of a product, and that's like that's bare minimum. That's what you're doing. That ability to kind of go viral or gain traction, or even just your subscribers, everyone see it, is kind of the game you're playing. And so, even for me, I mean, I started on Instagram early, so it was just photos, but I was sharing photos of the process, and I was getting somebody something to look into. Now, if you do that, it it becomes more of the same. A lot of people are making things, and that's great. Don't stop posting, but the more you build on that, you'll start to hopefully you'll start to think, how can I make this appealing too?
Mm.
Because it is cool. You should love your artwork. You should want to want it to give it a better opportunity to be seen. And so I think it really comes down to how are you sharing it and how you can improve on getting people to appreciate that. That's like the big focus. So you don't have to show your face. You don't have to talk in a video. Maybe you just do a video and pick it up. I'm always a big fan of filling it, because that's that barrier. Like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
This is not this is not a render from, Blender. That is a big thing I've noticed. So kind of bringing them into it. You have to draw your audience to actually want to pay attention. So that's what you need to understand, is the psychology of human, experience and interaction.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So you think it's a bigger challenge to have a faceless, sort of brand when it comes to being an artist and designer?
Not necessarily. I mean, a lot of my videos, it was difficult to show who I am. I would, like, early on, I do a lot of videos, but going on YouTube was a barrier that I had to break.
Yeah.
You could share what you're doing. You can put a camera up and press record and share what you're doing. If you don't want to talk and share some context behind it, that's okay too. Maybe just when you post it, you actually add that in, and hopefully someone actually takes the time to read it and they can understand it. So it's really just sharing who you are and what you're doing. So you don't necessarily have to show your persona. I think that just adds value. Some people may dislike that or cringe, or they may see their own struggles in a sense of sharing who they are, so they may not be one to sit there and watch your stuff because of their own their own way to perceive that. So but once you kind of get rid of that thought, I mean, there's no reason why you can't share yourself, like, I think the insecurities will definitely come up, but yeah, I wouldn't say let your face stop you from getting out there and sharing with the world,
Yeah. Looking to the future, like, what are the projects you dream of doing, and where do you kind of want to take your career in the next few years?
Like, I'm really loving 3D art, and I mean, like, actually diving into character design and clean topology, so the nerdy stuff of the 3D world, the video game pipeline stuff, and texturing. So one big goal, I mean, that's kind of a fun goal, is I want to learn how to paint 3D, just like my stuff here, how to render, so get clean. But in terms of what jobs I want, I mean, I would love to work with Star Wars. I would love to work on their IP and create and my style of work. It's one of the hurdles that I think I could face. I don't know, maybe not. But knowing when you do work with licensing and you do work with brands, there's a specific guideline they want. They want the logo to be here. They want this color. And so understanding that then kind of makes it more of their work, know? And so what I'm doing now is a blend of both. And so it would be nice to do what I do for them and not just license something. That's a goal. So that's always going to be up there at some point. Maybe when I'm 80, I don't know. Who knows? But that's probably the biggest goal. And then just see more designs come out. More characters from Star Wars is something I'm actually diving into, and just having fun. Like, I'm not in a hurry to get to somewhere with what I'm doing. I'm still juggling the day-to-day, but that'd probably be the biggest one. Collaborations with other people would always be great, but is it something I have to do? I'm still trying to answer that question,
Yeah. I'm curious, what do collaborations look like as an art toy designer or designer toy designer?
I'm just designing toys or making toys. I would say it just depends on who you're collaborating with. If you're, a company, an artist, and I mean artists in like illustration or comic books, or, or another 3D artist that doesn't do physicals, or another person that does physicals. I have experience with a little bit of both, or a few of them. But when it comes to another artist in the toy scene, it's just who wants to do what. I've had one recently, and I posted a vlog about it, where I created this little like teardrop, and it was a little character, and it was with Arctic Fox, a good friend of mine, and she does an amazing job at polishing. So that was her thing. I did the design-esque, we both worked on that, and I did all the like packaging and painting. And so we broke it up to what is equal value for both of us.
Yeah.
And as an agreement of whatever we sold and how it went, we would just split everything down the middle. No matter, we would just do what we need to do and paint and use our supplies, and she did the same. And I think it was a really smart move. And it's very important that you continue relationships like that and find out what is really working for you. So when you go into them, try to have not too many expectations, but more of, this might be something I want out of it, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what it looks like, is knowing how to delegate and what is your worth, what's their worth, and just agreeing to that.
Yeah. Yeah. One last question for you. And this is a question I pose to all my guests. And that is, how do you define success?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think success in my view now is doing what I love for the people that love what I do.
Nice.
And to me, if I'm doing that, I mean, I'm successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very well said.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Where can everybody find you? On Instagram, on YouTube, on all the platforms?
Yeah, so you can find me at Frank Montano. It's like Montana, but with an O at the end. You'll see a little smiley face. You can find me on Instagram there, and on YouTube, Feast Studio I go by, and then thefeaststudio.com. Yeah, those are my hubs. And then Patreon, Feast Studio, if you want to check that out too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mo. This has been really fun, so appreciate it.